She was the mom everyone admired, the perfect wife, the neighbor who never forgot your birthday. But behind every smile, behind every warm, good morning, was a secret life so dark, so dangerous, that when it came to light, it shattered everything she'd ever loved. This isn't a story about a criminal. It's a story about how far someone will go to protect their family, and how one lie can turn into a double life that destroys everything. Because sometimes, the person you trust the most, the one who tucks you in at night, is the one hiding the biggest secret of all. She was the kind of mother everyone in the neighborhood admired. The one who always smiled no matter how tired she was. The one who showed up for every school event with homemade cookies and neatly packed lunches. Her house was always in order, her garden perfectly trimmed, her family portraits glowing with happiness. To anyone passing by, she was the definition of balance, a loving wife, a caring mother, and a dependable friend. But behind the picture-perfect smile was a woman holding everything together with trembling hands. Every day began the same way, with the sound of her alarm at 5:30 a.m., the quiet hum of coffee brewing, and her soft footsteps as she prepared breakfast before anyone else woke up. Her husband left early for work. Her kids rushed to catch the school bus, and she stayed behind, tidying up a life that seemed so ordinary, it almost felt rehearsed. In her small town, everyone knew her name. She was the mom people turned to for advice, the one who volunteered at every fundraiser, the woman who seemed to have it all figured out. She laughed easily, she listened deeply, and she never let her exhaustion show. But if you looked closer, you might notice something off. The way her eyes sometimes drifted into the distance, or how she'd hesitate before answering questions about her job. People assumed it was just fatigue, the weight of motherhood. But there was something else buried behind her calm expression, something she worked very hard to hide. Her friends often told her how lucky she was. They envied her peaceful life, her husband's stable job, her beautiful children. Yet inside, she felt like she was performing a role, one that required constant perfection. There were moments when she'd stand in front of the mirror, looking at her reflection, and wonder who she really was beyond the titles of wife and mother. It wasn't unhappiness, not exactly. It was a quiet restlessness, a sense that part of her life existed somewhere else, waiting to be lived. The days blurred together. Laundry, dishes, errands, dinner, bedtime stories, all the rituals of a perfect home. But at night, when everyone was asleep, her world became silent. That's when she'd sit by the window, scrolling through her phone, staring at messages she couldn't let anyone see. Her husband trusted her completely. He never questioned where she went during her so-called extra work hours. He never asked why her paycheck didn't match her schedule. He believed in her the way people believe in the sun rising every morning. But even as she kissed him goodnight, her heart raced with the weight of secrets he would never understand. The first cracks appeared slowly. A missed school meeting here, a forgotten birthday text there. She'd become distracted, her mind elsewhere, as if she was living in two timelines at once. Her children started to notice small changes, the distant look in her eyes, the way she'd zone out in the middle of dinner, the way she'd smile at nothing. Her husband brushed it off as stress, saying, "She's just been working too hard." But deep down, he sensed something was wrong. There were nights when she'd come home later than usual, claiming she got caught in traffic or had to finish paperwork. Her excuses were always believable, delivered with the same gentle tone she used to calm her kids. But her hands would tremble when she unlocked the door. The air around her felt heavier, as if she carried invisible burdens wherever she went. Her phone became her most guarded possession. She never left it unattended, never let it out of sight. If someone asked to borrow it, she'd laugh it off, saying her battery was dead or she needed it for work. But there were moments when she'd step outside to take a call, lowering her voice, her eyes scanning the dark street as if afraid someone was watching. The lies started small enough to pass unnoticed. A lunch meeting that didn't exist, a friend she claimed to visit, a business trip that wasn't on any calendar. But lies, like cracks in glass, spread quickly. Soon, her entire routine became a carefully choreographed act, balancing between the woman her family believed she was and the person she was becoming when no one else was looking. Her husband began to question things more often. "You've been different lately," he said one night as they sat in the living room, the TV flickering in the background. She smiled and said she was just tired, that he was overthinking. But her voice was tight, her hands restless. The conversation ended there, but the doubt lingered. Her children noticed too. Her oldest daughter asked, "Mom, why don't you eat dinner with us anymore?" She forced a smile and said she'd eaten earlier, hiding the fact that she hadn't eaten at all. Food didn't interest her anymore. Only control did. Control over her story, her time, her lies. Her nights grew longer. She'd leave the house under the pretense of late-night work, her husband kissing her goodbye without suspicion. But as soon as she was out of sight, she transformed. Gone was the soft-spoken suburban mother. Her posture changed, her voice hardened, her eyes sharpened. She wasn't just living another life. She was becoming someone else entirely. The first time she realized how deep she'd gone was when her husband found one of her old receipts tucked into the wrong bag. It wasn't from any store nearby, and the date didn't match her story. He asked casually where she'd been that night, and she froze for just a second too long. Then she smiled, her voice calm, and said it must have been from an old trip. He believed her, but his trust began to waver. From then on, her life became a balancing act between two realities, the one she showed to the world and the one she was hiding in plain sight. Every morning she looked into her children's faces and told herself she was doing it for them, that whatever she was hiding was necessary, that someday they'd understand. But even as she told herself those words, a quiet fear grew inside her. How long could she keep this going? How long before the walls of her two lives collided and everything she built came crashing down? The cracks were no longer invisible. She could feel them in the air, in her husband's silence, in her children's questions, in her own reflection. The perfect mother everyone admired was slipping away, replaced by a stranger she didn't recognize. And though she smiled, though she played her role perfectly, deep inside she knew that something unstoppable was coming, something that would shatter the illusion forever. She had always been good at organizing her life into compartments, neat little boxes that never touched each other. That's how it began, with one small secret that she promised herself was harmless. The secret identity wasn't born out of greed or rebellion. It started as an escape, a way to breathe in a life that felt too predictable, too quiet. She'd been living as Laura Bennett for so long that she forgot what it felt like to be someone mysterious, someone who didn't have to explain herself. The first time she used a different name, it was almost a joke. She filled out a small online form using the name Lena Brooks. It made her feel invisible, powerful even. But what began as a small act of curiosity slowly became an entire existence she couldn't step away from. She built Lena Brooks with careful precision. A new phone number, a separate email address, a new wardrobe that no one in her neighborhood had ever seen. Lena dressed differently, confident, bold, commanding attention in a way that Laura never dared to. Lena spoke to people Laura would have crossed the street to avoid. Every detail of this second life was designed with perfection, and soon it didn't feel like pretending. It felt like freedom. At first, her second life was simple. She claimed she was doing consulting work for small events, helping businesses organize charity galas or private functions. But there was more to it than that. Through one client, she was introduced to a network of powerful, secretive individuals who lived in a different world. A world of money, influence, and danger. They didn't ask too many questions, and that suited her just fine. All they cared about was that she could make problems disappear. The money started to flow in. More than she'd ever made in her day job. At home, she told her husband she got a raise. He congratulated her, proud that her hard work was finally being recognized. She smiled and nodded, pretending her success was innocent. But every deposit in her hidden account came from a source she couldn't trace, a person she couldn't name. Each transaction tied her deeper into something she couldn't walk away from. She started meeting clients in fancy hotels, late at night, always using the name Lena. They spoke in code, exchanged envelopes, discussed plans that never made sense until later. The thrill of secrecy became addictive. She told herself it was temporary, just until she had enough savings to secure her family's future. But every time she tried to pull away, the phone would ring again. A new job, a bigger payment, a reminder that she was in too deep. In her second life, she felt alive. For the first time in years, she wasn't just a mother or a wife. She was someone people respected, even feared. She controlled outcomes, managed people's problems, made things happen. But with power came risk. She knew nothing about the people she worked for except that they operated in the shadows. They spoke with precision, never revealing more than necessary. She didn't realize until much later that these weren't just business people. They were tied to something much darker. Criminal organizations that used her legitimate work as a front for money laundering and trafficking connections. There were moments when her two worlds collided, almost disastrously. Once, during a family trip, she received an urgent call from one of her contacts. Her husband was right beside her as her phone buzzed repeatedly. She excused herself, saying it was work. In reality, she stepped outside to handle a transaction that could have put her in prison if anyone found out. Her voice was calm as she confirmed the transfer, her tone cold and practiced. When she walked back to her family, she was smiling again, as if nothing had happened. But the danger was growing. The more she did, the more they trusted her. And the more they trusted her, the more dangerous the requests became. One night, a man she had never seen before approached her car outside her office. He slid a file through her window and said, "This isn't optional." Inside were documents she didn't understand, but she followed the instructions anyway. Later, she learned that the documents were tied to an offshore account connected to criminal funds. She tried to convince herself she didn't know what she was part of, but deep down, she knew. She started seeing faces in crowds, cars that followed her longer than they should. The paranoia crept in slowly, but she pushed it away. She couldn't let fear ruin the balance she'd built. At home, she cooked dinner, helped with homework, tucked her children into bed, and smiled at her husband as if everything was fine. Then, as soon as the house fell silent, she'd transform again. The woman in the mirror with sharp eyes, clutching her phone, living on the edge of exposure. The secrecy began to suffocate her. Every day felt like walking on a frozen lake, hearing the cracks but pretending not to. Her husband's questions grew sharper. "Where do you really go at night? Who keeps calling you?" She deflected with charm, turning suspicion into guilt. "You don't trust me anymore?" she'd ask softly, and he'd back down every time. But inside, she knew the truth. The double life she had created was consuming her. There was no line between Laura and Lena anymore. They had blended into one person, and that terrified her. She couldn't tell where the lies ended and her real self began. Her dreams were filled with flashing lights, voices whispering her name, her children calling for her as she ran down endless hallways trying to hide. She tried once to end it. She ignored the calls, blocked the numbers, deleted the contacts. But within days, she found an envelope taped to her car windshield. No name, just her alias written in bold letters. Lena. Inside was a photograph of her family at the park. The message was clear. She wasn't allowed to quit. They knew where she lived, who she loved, and how to control her. From that day, fear became her shadow. She smiled harder, laughed louder, played her role better. But every gesture, every word was calculated. She couldn't afford a mistake. The people she worked for didn't tolerate disobedience. And though she wanted to confess to her husband, she knew that would only put him and their children in danger. So she buried the truth deeper, behind layers of charm and lies, hoping no one would ever peel them back. The longer it went on, the heavier the guilt grew. She'd sit in her car late at night, watching the lights flicker through the windshield, wondering how she ended up here. All she ever wanted was control, a sense of identity. But what she found instead was a life ruled by fear, by people who saw her as nothing more than a useful pawn. Yet she couldn't stop. Every decision led to another lie. Every secret demanded another one to cover it. Her second life had started as an escape. Now it was a prison without walls, one she'd built herself. And no matter how hard she tried to balance the two versions of her life, she could feel the edges collapsing. Because no secret stays buried forever, and every double life eventually runs out of room to hide. The night the truth finally surfaced, the world around her seemed to slow down. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation like in the movies. No screaming, no chaos, just quiet disbelief filling the air like smoke. Her husband stood in the doorway holding the file he had found in her drawer, his eyes searching hers for an explanation. He had spent weeks piecing things together. The receipts, the phone calls, the strange deposits that didn't match her story. The moment he spoke her other name, the name Lena, she knew it was over. There was no point pretending anymore. The mask she had worn for so long cracked right there in their living room, and the woman he thought he knew began to disappear. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. His silence was worse than anger. It was disappointment, confusion, heartbreak all at once. Their children slept upstairs, unaware that their family was unraveling beneath them. She tried to explain, to make him understand that it wasn't about betrayal or greed, that she had only wanted to protect them, to give them a better future. But the words sounded hollow, broken, like pieces of a story that no longer made sense. Every lie she had told came rushing back to her. The late nights, the missed birthdays, the empty promises. And she realized there was no way to make it right. He wanted to believe her, to see the woman he had married beneath all the deceit. But trust once cracked doesn't mend easily. The love between them was still there, but it was fragile, like glass that had been shattered and poorly glued back together. The more she tried to explain, the more he saw how deep it went. It wasn't just a few bad decisions. It was an entire second life built on secrecy and danger. And the worst part was that she had dragged their family into it, whether she meant to or not. The following days blurred together. The house that once felt warm and full of laughter now felt like a stranger's home. She could feel the weight of judgment in every corner, the echoes of trust that had been broken. Her husband moved quietly around her, barely speaking, his eyes avoiding hers. The children sensed something wrong but didn't understand what. Her oldest asked why Dad wasn't talking much, why Mom seemed sad all the time. She wanted to tell them the truth, to admit that she had failed them. But how do you tell your children that the person they look up to most has been living a lie? The phone calls that once terrified her now stopped coming. The people she worked for vanished as if they never existed, leaving her alone to face the mess she had created. She knew that silence wasn't safety. It was a warning. People like them didn't forget, and they didn't forgive. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every car passing by made her heart race. The world she built in the shadows had turned against her, and there was no one left to protect her from it. Her husband finally called the police. He didn't do it out of anger, but out of desperation. He couldn't keep living in fear, waiting for something worse to happen. When they arrived, she didn't resist. She sat quietly as they asked questions, answering only what she had to. She didn't cry, didn't plead for sympathy. Part of her was relieved it was over, that she no longer had to keep up the lie. As they led her away, she glanced back at her house, at the window where her children stood watching, their faces pale and confused. That image burned into her mind, a reminder of everything she had lost in the name of keeping secrets. In the weeks that followed, her story spread beyond the small neighborhood. People whispered, speculated, tried to make sense of how a mother who seemed so perfect could hide something so dark. Some said she was forced into it, others said she was driven by greed, but no one truly knew what she had been through. No one knew how much she had sacrificed trying to balance love and lies, survival and fear. To the world she became a cautionary tale, the mom who lived a double life. But to her family she was just a ghost of the woman they once loved, a reminder of what deceit can destroy. In her solitude she replayed everything over and over, every decision that led her there. She thought about how easily it all began, one small lie that grew roots until it strangled her entire life. She thought about her husband's face when he realized who she really was, the disbelief in his eyes when the woman he trusted became a stranger before him. She thought about her children, how they would grow up remembering the night their mother was taken away, how they would hear stories about her from others and wonder which version was true. The guilt was unbearable. But there was something else beneath it, a quiet understanding. She realized that in her attempt to protect her family, she had become the very thing she feared most, the danger itself. Every choice she made to keep them safe had only pulled them closer to the edge. And now that everything was gone, the only thing left was reflection, the painful clarity that comes when it's too late to change anything. Her husband visited her once. They didn't speak much. He sat across from her, his eyes tired, her hands shaking as she tried to find the right words. There was no anger left in him, only sadness. Before he left, he said softly, "We just wanted you." That sentence echoed in her head for days. All they had ever needed was her. Not the money, not the false security, not the double life she thought would protect them. Just her. She would never forget the moment she understood that love and lies cannot coexist. You can't build safety on secrets, no matter how noble the reason seems. In trying to be everything, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the protector, the savior, she lost herself. Her identity had become a costume stitched from deception, and when it finally tore apart, there was nothing left underneath but regret. The emotional fallout didn't just destroy her family, it haunted everyone who had ever looked up to her. Her friends avoided her name, neighbors spoke in hushed tones, her children changed schools to escape the whispers. The image of the perfect mother vanished, replaced by one of shame and disbelief. But within that destruction was a painful truth. No one is ever as perfect as they seem. And sometimes the people who look the strongest are the ones hiding the deepest cracks. She often thought about the ocean, how it could look so calm on the surface but hide endless chaos beneath. That was her life, a mirror of stillness covering storms. She wondered if her children would ever forgive her, if they would understand that every lie she told came from fear, not selfishness. But forgiveness, she knew, wasn't something she could ask for. It was something she had to earn, even if it took the rest of her life. There are no heroes in her story, only lessons. That a double life always costs more than it gives. That love can't thrive where truth is absent. That even the most devoted hearts can lose their way when fear takes over. And somewhere behind every smile, there might be a story no one dares to tell. A secret that changes everything once it's exposed. She wasn't born to deceive. She was born to love, to care, to protect. But when fear took over, love became her weapon, and lies became her armor. She built two worlds, one of warmth, family, and laughter, and another of darkness, secrets, and silent danger. Every late-night call, every whispered excuse, every hidden truth, they were all choices she made, thinking she was saving the people she loved most. But the truth always finds a way out. And when it did, it tore through everything she had tried to hold together. Her family, her trust, her identity, all fell apart under the weight of her double life. Because no matter how good the intention, deception always has a cost. She learned that protection without honesty becomes poison, that you can't keep your loved ones safe by building a wall of lies around them. The woman the world saw, the kind, gentle, devoted mother, was real. But so was the other side of her, the desperate woman who would do anything to survive. In the end, she wasn't a villain or a saint. She was human, a reminder that perfection is often just a mask. And sometimes the people we think are the strongest are fighting battles we can't even imagine. This story isn't just about a mom who lived a double life. It's about the fragility of trust, the danger of silence, and the tragedy of losing yourself while trying to save everyone else. Every secret has a heartbeat, and when it stops, so does the life you built around it.